Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in Sophomore English. We are in the MyPerspectives volume. We turn out on page 224, Revenge of the Geeks, the Alexandra Robbins offering, which is a provocative title, no question. But what Robbins is going to argue in this piece, and again, just to remind, we're in Unit 2, Outsiders and Outcasts, that it's often the individuals who are considered during especially high school experiences as the outsiders and the outcasts that later on in life will become so important to the future of our country. Now, there's going to be, I think, an interesting recognition of the value of individuals who will play lots and lots of different roles in our world. So I'm going to set you up for that as we get ready to do our reading. Again, just to remind, make sure at level 1 you're capable of summarizing this passage as we're finishing. At level 2A, what do you think is the central idea or the theme or the message that Robbins is trying to translate? And then at 2B, I want you to concentrate in the rhetoric or literary analysis at her tone as we read this essay. It will be, I think, valuable for us to ask, is she trying to create enemies or make friends? So I would write that one down in terms of her tone. Again, the idea of tone, you walk in, it's late at night, your mom goes, where have you been? And you say, where do you think I've been? And she says, don't use that tone of voice with me. It's not the words you say, it's what? How you use those words. At 3A, well, obviously I'm going to ask you to have some connection with all the previous Unit 2 titles that we've been working with. And then finally at 3B, I'm going to ask you, is there a way for you to own or identify with some of the ideas of the passage? Let's go ahead and go to work. We'll begin with some background information first.
Revenge of the Geeks by Alexandra Robbins. Argument. Background.
Page 225.
The word geek has a long history. One of its earliest appearances was as Gecko in the works of Shakespeare, as a word for fool. It became geek in the late 19th century, and by the middle of the 20th century, it had come to be used as a generic, all-purpose insult. In the 1970s, however, geek came to mean specifically an overly eager student, especially one interested in computers. About the author.
Page 224.
Alexandra Robbins, born 1976, is a journalist and best-selling author. She has written for several newspapers and magazines, including the Los Angeles Times, the Washington Post, and the Atlantic. Robbins' journalism is highly regarded. She was a recipient of the John Bartlow Martin Award. Her most recent work, The Nurses, A Year of Secrets, Drama, and Miracles with the Heroes of the Hospital, has been praised for its investigative merit and captivating narrative of the nursing profession. Revenge of the Geeks
Page 225.
by Alexandra Robbins. Many popular students approach graduation day with bittersweet nostalgia. Excitement for the future is tempered by fear of lost status. But as cap and gown season nears, let's also stop to consider the outcasts.
Mark it.
Students for whom finishing high school feels like liberation from a state-imposed sentence. In 7 years of reporting from American middle and high schools, I've seen repeatedly that the differences that cause a student to be excluded in high school are often the same traits or skills that will serve him or her well after graduation.
That's your thesis.
Examples abound. Taylor Swift's classmates left the lunch table as soon as she sat down because they disdained her taste for country music. Last year, the Grammy winner was the nation's top-selling recording artist. Students mocked Tim Gunn's love of making things. Now, he is a fashion icon with the recognizable catchphrase, "Make it work." J.K. Rowling, author of the best-selling Harry Potter series, has described herself as a bullied child who lived mostly in books and daydreams. It's no wonder she went on to write books populated with kids she describes as outcasts and comfortable with being so.
Mark it.
For many, says Sacred Heart University psychology professor Catherine LaFontana, high school is the first foray into the adult world, where kids have to think about their own status. And for teenagers, says LaFontana, who studies adolescent peer relationships and social status, the worst thing in the world is to be different from other people. That's what makes someone unpopular.
Mark it.
In the rapidly conformist school environment, the qualities that make people different make them targets. In adulthood, however, the qualities that make people different make them compelling. Some students are vaguely aware of this reality. An 8th grade boy in Indiana told me, "I'm always single, so it's tough. Never can get a girl. The smart thing repels girls. I like being smart because I breeze through school. That's the good thing, but the girl thing is killing me." It's hard to know when you're in high school that the smart thing is likely to translate into later success, or that the girl thing is bound to improve. That's why it's up to adults to convey constantly to teenagers that the characteristics that marginalize them can pay off after graduation.
Mark it.
Geeks profit from their technological know-how. Emos benefit from being empathetic and unafraid to display emotion. Skaters, punks, and others who pursue their arts with fervor benefit from the creativity they've honed. Gamers have learned both problem-solving skills and the ability to collaborate through collective intelligence.
Mark that.
In the adult world, being out is in. Geek chic and nerd merch are on the rise. Nerdcore hip-hop artists have penetrated mainstream consciousness. And the nerd prom known as Comic-Con draws high-profile celebrities and throngs of smitten fans. They're all part of what Jerry Holkins, creator of the Penny Arcade webcomic and video game conference, calls the social pariah outcast aesthetic.
Mark that.
Adults tend to be mature enough to recognize that there would be no progress, cures for diseases, ways to harness new energy sources, without people who are different. Successful scientists think distinctively.
Mark that.
So what happens to high school's popular students? Research shows that they are more likely than outsiders to conform, which can also mean they're less likely to innovate. They are more likely to be both targets and instigators of aggression, whether physical or relational, which includes rumors, gossip, and backstabbing. They are more likely to drink and engage in other risky behaviors. Students who are popular and involved in aggression are less likely to do well in school. Psychologists point out that high-status cliques teach the exclusionary behavior that may be the foundation for eventual racism, anti-Semitism, sexism, and other forms of bigotry.
Mark it.
That's not to say, of course, that popularity in high school necessarily leads to mediocrity, or worse, in adulthood. But neither is there necessarily something wrong with a student merely because he is excluded by classmates.
The counter
We
view,
don't
right?
view a saxophonist as musically challenged if he can't play the violin. He's just a different kind of musician. A sprinter is still an athlete, even if she can't play basketball. She's a different kind of athlete. Similarly, we might acknowledge that students who don't follow the popular crowd's lead aren't any less socially successful. They're just a different kind of social. The education landscape would be so much more bearable if students could understand this, and if schools found better ways to nurture kids who reject the in-crowd image.
Mark it.
The worst aspect of the treatment of student outsiders isn't the name-calling. It isn't the loneliness. It isn't even the demise of attitudes and programs that are important for fostering creativity and independence. The most heartbreaking consequence of this treatment is that tens of thousands of students, imaginative, interesting, impressionable people, think that they have done or felt something wrong. It's not enough to merely tell them that in the real world, it gets better. They need to know before graduation that being different is not a problem, but a strength.
I want to start at level 2B really quickly with rhetoric. Notice that Robbins will like her trinities, like her threes. Look at paragraph 16 at the end. The worst aspect of the treatment of student outsiders isn't the name-calling, 1. It isn't the loneliness, 2. It isn't even the demise of attitudes and programs that are important for fostering creativity and independence, 3. The most heartbreaking consequence of this treatment is that tens of thousands of students, imaginative, interesting, impressionable people, think they have done or felt something wrong. A three-pronged argument. Look at paragraphs 3, 4, and 5. After her thesis that it is often the outcast students that go on to become extremely successful after high school, she uses Taylor Swift, Tim Gunn, and J.K. Rowling. And of course, all three of these examples, well, I mean, you could obviously add bunches more on if you wanted to. let's quickly work at level 1, summarize what you think this essay is saying, some obvious observations about not so much the value of being an outcast, but the recognition that it is often the outcasts or the outsiders in our high school setting that will go on to be quite successful. And the opposite is also important. Often our most popular students are also kind of conformists in ways. They conform to what everyone else wants them to do. So for example, you often will have higher rates of drinking of alcohol and use of illicit drugs and that kind of thing among that group, simply because they are conformists of a kind. But what is the 2A message here? Well, she's making a values argument. She is saying we should value everyone in school. Those who, of course, are popular and successful in the traditional sense of the word. It's not that there's something wrong with them, but there is something for sure important about those who don't walk that path. And that's the point I think Robbins is trying to make here. You come up with your own view. At 3A, I want you to write down Ralph Waldo Emerson. As sophomores, you are preparing to study with us in the junior curriculum the great Emerson, who wrote a famous essay called Self-Reliance, where he said, he who would be a man must be a nonconformist. The argument that Emerson will make that became so important during the what we call transcendental movement in American thought. He argues that it's important that we look at the heroes of history as predominantly being outsiders. In that same essay, he will reference Christ, he will reference Copernicus, he will reference Newton, he will reference Pythagoras, and make the observation that to be great is to be misunderstood. Now, of course, at 2B, that doesn't necessarily make it easier for those of us who perceive ourselves as being outsiders or outcasts to own an essay like this. Where do you come down on this? To what degree are you the individual who has no one to sit with at lunch, or the individual who usually makes sure that they don't get to sit with you? It might be an interesting challenge to see if you can see the world through different eyes, huh? Thank you.